Researchers from the University of Superior's College of Geography and Natural Resources have been exploring state-owned land to learn more about the soils and rock formations of Magnolia County. And that brought them here, an area near Bailey Lake, often cited as being an excellent area for agate hunting. And as a geological team explores, it soon becomes apparent that the area is home to a large shale deposit. The university informs the state of their discovery, and Governor Johnson quickly moves the quiet discussions because she knows what a breakthrough this is. She then quietly instructs the Department of Natural Resources to seek out companies willing to extract resources on behalf of the citizens of the state of Superior. You see, she's devised a plan to create the Superior Permanent Fund, which will be modeled on the Alaska Permanent Fund, a fund that pays residents a share of the state's oil revenues. While this would obviously help the fortunes of those that are less fortunate in the state, the reality is it's an election year, and it's good politics. Though the secretary and staff of the DNR immediately voice concerns about the plan, the governor advises that the secretary serves at the pleasure of the governor, and that they're totally replaceable if they can't follow her orders. So a request for proposal is quickly issued. After a quick review process, a local petroleum company, Hancock Energies, wins the rights to extract the resources. And they quickly work to secure permits for their mine and a fuel plant that would process the shale locally. They also work with Northern Superior Railroad, a local shortline, to plan out a new rail yard and cargo terminal. These facilities would be used to export processed fuels to areas south of Magnolia County. And as you can imagine, this move deeply upsets Jamila and Clearwater Southern as they feel that their territory is being encroached upon. Magnolia County residents are only informed of the process when the environmental review process begins under NEPA. Environmentalists feel blindsided and attempt to slow the permitting process down. However, most Magnolia County residents seem resigned to the outcome and say little throughout the process. Of those that do speak up, James Jones is an enthusiastic supporter of the project because he understands that this new operation will lead to jobs and those new employees will need places to live. He quickly and quietly purchases land near the future operation, much to the chagrin of his wife. Chuckles speaks up as well, and he's absolutely despondent. He thought that Magnolia County was different. It was a place that cared about its natural beauty. It worked to preserve those kinds of spaces, unlike Superior City. But once again, here he is in a place that's all too happy to destroy the natural environment for a quick buck. And he knows what he has to do. So in this episode, we're gonna go big on oil. We'll build a few shale mines, a fuel plant, a boatload of rail infrastructure, and the bones of a small community, Bailey, to support the whole operation. And once we're done, we'll make a few fixes based on your feedback, so make sure that you stick around till the end of the episode. And if you support Governor Johnson's vision, hit the like button. If you sympathize with Chuckles, hit the like button for that too, and let me know down in the comments how you feel. Or drop an emoji that reminds you of Chuckles for the sake of engagement. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello and welcome back to Magnolia County. I figured we'd start here with the view of the entire region so I could give you some context as to where we're going to be building today. So most of our build will be taking place around this little bend in the river, and right here is the actual city of Bend. There's Charity Island, and there is the university. So we are about as far away from everything as we can be, and in fact, we're actually on the edge of the map. So let's begin by purchasing some tiles, and we are going to be buying a lot of them. The first thing I want to do is take a look at our natural resources view because we're going to purchase all the tiles that have oil on them in this area. And then I want to purchase tiles that will give us access to the highway and the power. And then we need to find a way out of this basin. And I think that we're going to need to buy a whole bunch of tiles to have a reasonable slope to the edge of the map. So we'll buy these 4 right here and then these 2. And then we're right by Bailey Lake, so I'm going to get those ones as well. And we'll get these 2 to kind of round things out. And now that we've purchased all of our tiles, we're ready to kick things off, but I want to leave one little bit of a disclaimer. This is going to be a build that's going to be controversial. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a dirty industry. And I like building these sorts of things because I want to create real places that change over time and that we can fix. So I know that there's going to be some people that are wondering why I'm building this, where I'm building this, why I'm destroying pristine forests. It's because things like that happen, and we will fix them over time. So with the plan in place, let's move on to building our rail connections. Now, I understand that building rail might not be the most obvious spot to begin, but I think that we have to start here because the rail is going to really influence the terraforming that we do in the area. So the very first thing I'm going to build is actually our rail yard, and I want to put that right at the base of this hill right here. I want the road to be facing towards the water, and I want this to be in a relatively flat location. We are going to grab our double track from the outside and run that along the back side of this facility. We're going to try to have a 5.5% grade or less up to this area right here. Now, I know that's very extreme. I actually had a conversation with B. Squigelhausen about this earlier today, trying to figure out the most extreme rail grade that would still be plausible. And we found that the most extreme rail grade in the US for a freight line is 5.8%. So I don't want the most extreme rail grade in the US. I want one that's extreme but not not crazy. So we are going to run something up right about here. So I'm going to add a flat pad, and I'm going to be upfront with you and say that this is going to be a lot of eyeballing and likely a lot of changing. So we'll right mouse click up here and slope up to it. And actually, I'm going to come like this so I can actually make sure I'm drawing a straight line. And now hopefully we get 5.5. It is, ooh, that is hard. 7.1. And that is 5.9. We are getting closer, but that would still be the most extreme slope in the entire US. And that one is 5.2. So I'm going to be pleased about that. Now, fun fact here, you don't need to come in with your outside connection completely parallel with the edge of the map. You can do something like that and it will work. Now we need to find the rest of our way down here. And I actually think I want to turn this thing. So we're going to turn it towards this gap right here. And in an ideal world, we would bridge this. I don't know that we live in an ideal world though, so we'll have to try our best. Here's where the bridge comes in, and here's where I get a bit uncomfortable. So first of all, I think we've got to turn this a little bit. Now, ideally, we would go right down here and do something like this. We still want to drop down, and we're okay with a bridge. That's actually pretty darn good. And now what I want to do is turn this and try to use the hill to our advantage. So I'm going to eyeball this. But here's the thing. When you do that, you can see that it's not actually terraforming the way that we would expect it to. It's kind of terraforming the way you'd want a road to terraform, but not necessarily a train. So I'm going to flatten this out, and then we'll redo it. And that is much more reasonable. And now it's just trying to find a way to line this up with this. So what I think I'm going to do is grab this view right here. This is not quite right. We are going to need to carve into the hillside more, but I want to basically create a pad right about here. I'll let this go flat for a little bit longer, and then we'll slope from here to here. And now it's just finding a way to make this connect up with here. I have an idea. I'm wondering if we just find where this goes and curve in, if we can't adjust it afterwards. And there we go. That is a really nice slope up all the way up this hill. That is going to work for us. And what I'm thinking is we'll leave some of the carving into the hillside, but I do want to soften things on the downslope side. And then the other thing I think I want to do is make sure that we have a uniform appearance on the sides. So I will right mouse click the top and slope up to that and push this back so that we don't have the train hitting the side of the mountain. That wouldn't be, that's not ideal. And then the last thing that I'm going to do to fix this or make it look even better is to add a key wall. And I think that to me, that gives us a slightly more polished look. Over here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. And honestly, I think I like that even more. I just sloped to this. So I'm going to try that over here as well. Basically, I found the top height, and then I found the edge of this, and then I sloped up the side, and you end up with that really nicely polished appearance. And now we need to connect up the rail yard with our main line. And this is going to be more of a trick. So what we will start out with is kind of extending out this flat pad. And I'm going to take this up maybe 20 units. Now I need to slope up the main line in the rail yard up to this. So what we'll do is try to map out where this will go. And there we go with our 5.3. I'm going to use our complex curve tool for this. Set the midpoint, select where we're going, and then curve up into our rail line. And that's a nice connection. Now for the rest of these, I basically want to try to make sure that I'm not merging at the same location. So I'm going to bring the two tracks together and then merge them into this main line at the same time before we get up here. So for this one, let's have this occur a little bit later. And I'm doing that because we're going to be grading all of this anyway. So it's going to be just as easy as me basically stealing the grading here and repeating it right next to it and then smoothing it out. And there we go. And I just want to make sure, how do these tracks look? Honestly, pretty outstanding. So we'll do the exact same thing on this one. Now for this one, I need to merge in before there so we don't have a bunch of tearing. Now, I'm going to switch gears once again because we've got to get power, water, and other utilities to this site, as well as start to think about how we make our way up here to complete our rail network. So I'm going to begin by adding a road right in front of this facility. And now I need to figure out where we're going to cross right here. So I'm going to switch over to a highway because this will be a highway. And what I'm thinking is, there's two different approaches. We could obviously try to get two short bridges across here. That's one approach. Or we could have one longer bridge in the shortest location that we have available to us. That would likely be purchasing more tiles. I don't know that I want to do that. So what we're going to do instead is cross right about here. And then from here, I'm going to drop this down to 0 and attempt to merge in at basically a 90. So now with this will be the road that eventually heads up the side of the hill. We'll probably attempt to use the terrain here to our advantage and cut up the side of the mountain. And then we'll parallel this road right along there. Now you might be surprised that I'm blocking all of this off. You have to remember the way that cargo lines work in this game. So we'll be able to send our train. So if we have our cargo facility up here, we'll be able to send the train out into wherever this is, and then it will ping right back to our cargo facility. It'll be just fine, so we don't need to worry. And now let's make a pad for our cargo rail facility. And I'll just try to find a height that makes some sense. And I decided to take that back because it looked a little bit strange, the connection did. And I think that if we reestablish this and really zoom in and watch what we're doing, hopefully we can make this look a little bit nicer. Yeah, that is considerably better. I like that a ton more. So from here, we've got to add a road connection, obviously, to this facility. This is one of the things that I think is going to be unfortunate. I'd love to just basically snap onto the roads here and extend this out a little ways. But even with that, we're going to have this problem right here where it says that there's no roadway connection. And why don't we make a bit of lemonade? And we'll do my favorite. We'll add a bunch of parking. Reasonably, we're a long ways away from the real world right now. And I do think that you'd expect to see some sort of parking facility here. I know there's a bit here, but to me that looks almost like guest parking. So, and now we'll finally build our highway here, our arterial right through this area. And now let's finally make our highway connection over here. So we've got a ton more work to do over here, obviously, but I'm going to hold off on that for a moment and let's get power and water to this area. I'm going to light this road. This will be part of this urbanized area, and we'll send that all the way back to here. And now I'm going to connect the road right here directly into the highway. And I'm going to be upfront with you and say that I think that this is probably going to change, but for the time being, it will allow us to establish our utilities. And speaking of that, what I want to do is send power across the river. So I'm going to flatten a pad where we can add a new transformer for this community. And that leaves us with our sanitary sewer and our water connections. So what I think we're going to do is use a water tower. We'll place that kind of on the entryway into the community, make it kind of a gateway feature, maybe even up here. Doesn't really do much, but for the sake of the visuals, we're just going to roll with it. And now I'll connect this up with the copper highway, which isn't necessary. There's no pipes underneath here, but we're going to do it anyway because pipes belong underneath the road. So for the time being, that is our water connection. And, you know, for our sanitary sewer, we're just going to connect up to the outside world. We are right there already. and I'm going to follow our rail line. And now that I think about it, I probably should have run a combined water and sewer pipe down the copper highway. So let's just upgrade this. And then the very last thing I want to do in this area is just do a little bit of smoothing in this area where we've carved things out pretty good. The last thing that we need to do is set up our route here, and I don't want to forget about that, so we'll do it right away. We'll grab our cargo route tool, and then we'll create a line at our cargo train terminal, have it go out to Odenville. We've got to change that. And there we go. I think that we are going to rename Odenville Iron Mountain. So Iron Mountain is near the southern part of the state, so that seems to be a good connection right there. And now let's go ahead and rename this route. So right now it says Cargo Route 5. We'll name this Bailey to Iron Mountain. And now all of our lines are named appropriately. And with our rail established, let's move on to building our shale mining operation. Now this probably won't surprise you much, but I don't know all that much about shale mining. So I decided to do a little bit of research, and I looked at shale mines in British Columbia, Alberta, and North Dakota. Now, a couple of things jump out to me about all these mines. First and foremost, they're almost all square or rectangular. They're of a variety of sizes, so the sizes can really be whatever we want them to be. I'm also noticing that these look like they're carved into things. So it's a forest and it's been carved into that. It's a farm field and it's been carved into that. And then finally, these are all built along the existing roadway grid. So we're gonna have to reestablish that here. So that is going to be our first challenge. So we've already purchased a ton of tiles, which makes this a bit more difficult than it had to be, but I happened to do a little bit of research on this as well. And one tile is about 77 units by 77 units across. So with that knowledge in mind, we should be able to create a grid through here. So I want to find the corner right here. So now that we have that, let's go back to our units, and we're going to go 77 units over, and that is one zoning tile. So let's mirror that down here, and then we'll go up 77 again, and we're going to do that all the way through this area. And then after the fact, I'm going to delete areas like this that don't make a ton of sense. We'll have the roads respect the topography rather than going up hillsides. And there we go. We've got our Jeffersonian grid right here. We've got to make a couple of improvements to it though. That's what we'll call it. So I want to make sure that these are connecting to something. I can't get the full 77 here. We're going off the side of the hill. So I'm going to cut a diagonal across here. There we go. And then the last one that we need to figure out is really kind of the base of this mountain right here. Then we'll just complex curve right into that. That looks really, really good. And we'll do the same thing down here. Now, the next thing I want to do is add a highway because we have that highway coming up here. And I think that this is going to be an important connection in here. So let's upgrade portions of this after we figure out where we're going. Now, I want this to be an outside connection because right now this is a cul-de-sac. And if we have another connection to the outside world, we can de-cul-de-sac this. So what I'm thinking that we do is we grab this road right here and convert this to be the highway and send it right to the outside world. So I'll begin actually right here. And there is our outside connection. And now we just have some upgrading to do. So I'm going to upgrade all the way down here. And now we need this road to curve into this road over here. And I'm just going to simple curve between this existing highway here and the one that we're trying to reach. And that will do the trick for us. I'd imagine there'd be stop signs here and maybe you can't turn right on this one. In fact, let's formalize that. No rights here, no lefts here. And now it should be okay. A little bit ugly, but we're going to roll with it. And then I want to turn this highway into the copper highway. So with that, we've established kind of the historical bones of this area. It's time to start adding in some of our mines. And now I want to take a look at where our deposits are, and you can see it's basically everywhere within these couple of tiles and then kind of halvesies over here. So I'm going to have a fairly large field right here. And then I'm going to upgrade all of these roads that are out here to be paved roads. And then we'll take the roads that come in here and we're going to make those dirt roads. To me, that feels a lot more natural. And now outside of snapping to existing geometry, I want this to feel really flowing. So we are going to just send this up. I'm going to use the complex road tool and we'll create kind of a turnaround right here. And it won't be pretty, but it's going to do the trick for us. Now we are going to need to connect up water, power, and sanitary sewer to all of these. And there we go. That is water, power, sanitary sewer, all serving this area. Let's add a few more of these. And there we go. We've added a number of these fields throughout here. And now the trick is going to be filling this in with other uses as well. Now, the reason I say that's the trick is if we look at our natural resources, we'll see that there's really nothing up here. So we'll add a little bit of chickens throughout this area. And I think that we'll even reuse some of these roads that we have here. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you and say that I didn't really expect to build that many farms, but I just kind of got into it and I wanted to fill it in. Now, what I also want to do is add in a bit more forestry. You can see it's a little bit light in some of these areas. And thankfully, we've got our forestry brushes. So I will go into place multiple. And oh my goodness, the mod has been updated and now we have custom sets if we want them. I'm not going to dive into that right now, but that is a really exciting development. So I think for now, we will stick with the 50% brush strength, maybe increase this to 300 so it covers a large swath of land. And then we'll use both the deciduous and the evergreen and maybe even the bushes. The one thing I'm really curious about, we've added a whole bunch of production of livestock. And you know, we have a surplus, but it's not nearly as extreme as I thought it was going to be. And in terms of our oil production, we're doing all right. We've got a surplus, but it's not all that extreme. Now, one of the things you'll notice about oil is that it needs to be processed, and that's what we're going to do now, add some processing. So there are two ways that we could do this. We could add in some general industrial, or we can add in a signature building that we've unlocked, the fuel plant. And this is what I want to do. So this is a really interesting asset. In fact, I think it's one of the more interesting ones that I've seen in the game so far. I think you want to try to locate this close to employees. So we are going to have a little community down here. So I'm going to place this kind of at the base of this hill right here. This will give us close access to the highway. It'll be a little bit of backpedaling to get back up here to our rail facility, but it's still going to be pretty close. So I'm going to place that on some flat ground, and I want to give this thing a lot of space because we are going to be adding a boatload of parking. And look at the absolutely crazy number of employees at the fuel plant. You're also noticing that this requires grains. It's trying to produce petrochemicals. This will change. So the interesting thing about the fuel plant is that it will take whatever resources it has and prioritize that as a company. So I have a feeling that because there's a whole bunch of oil being produced up here, it will eventually convert over to requiring oil. But for the time being, I'm not going to worry at all about that. I'm going to worry about parking because I don't know where all these people are going to park. There's like, I don't know, maybe 24 parking spaces included with this asset, and almost 900 employees can be here. So let's add a whole bunch. Now, reasonably, this probably isn't enough, but we're going to roll with it anyway. And I want to make sure that we have more than one outlet for this facility because this is a very flammable place. The last thing we want is a very flammable facility to only have one way out. That would be a huge fire hazard. And then I think I'm going to leave this fairly significant space in front of this facility. I'm not overly concerned about it. Here's the thing. Oftentimes, industrial properties will have a whole bunch of extra land around them for future expansion. Even parking lots, they may overbuild parking with the idea that in the future they'll expand and they'll be able to expand into their current parking lot. So I look at this and I see it as a feature, not a bug. So that said, I am very curious if this is going to swap over. We've got no employees and this place is not doing well at all. So we do need to start thinking, oh, geez. Oh, boy. Well, and what that tells me is we need to start thinking about our town layout. So we've got a lot of fires and we have no employees. That's stressful, but we don't need to panic. What I think we're going to do is try to start small. We're going to take this little crest right here and begin our grid here. And I don't want to overdo it. We're not going to build out a gigantic community. We're just going to start small. A couple of considerations for this. If we aren't careful, we could cul-de-sac this. It'd be really tempting just to grab what I'm going to probably call Railroad Street, use that as our main street, and cul-de-sac this whole community. We can't do that. So I think we'll add a viaduct right here, and then we may also attempt to find another way out of town over here. That'll bring some activity in here and help that town fill up without relying 100% on this little bridge, which is a pinch point. I also think that we should probably add a road that is not Railroad Street as the main access in here. And we are going to be getting rid of this access. This is not good to have all of these access points along the highway right here. And there we go. Now we only have one access onto the highway. There's another one right here. Obviously, it'd be better to have fewer, but at least there's some spacing in between all these now. Now, I'm going to use our 2-lane road as our arterial through here. And then I'm going to do something I honestly don't like all that much. I'm going to be using the alleyways as our principal roads through here. I think for the aesthetic that we're trying to get in this community, it's going to make a lot of sense. And basically what I want to do is demonstrate that the people who are forming this community really don't care about sidewalks. So this road right here will be framing out our grid. And this will be that main road that comes through the entire community. So we will link this road up with this one. And now this road is going to snake up here and find a way out of town. So I think we're going to need to change this just a little bit. So I did all of that because I want to have space to have a road going in parallel outside of town. And this will once again be a highway. And now we just need to find a way up here. And what I think we'll do is we'll follow the base of the hill right here and then switch back up. And there we go. I think that that is going to do the trick for us. There are a couple of spots where maybe it's a little bit tight, but at a certain point, you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I think that we've done pretty good right here. The one thing I will do, because we have the ability to do so, is we are going to add a key wall around the outside of some of these areas. And what that'll do for us is give us basically the effect of having some sort of a barrier, which I think is great. And you can see that right here. We've got that barrier. That is wonderful. Really outstanding. The more I play with this mod, the more I think it was a weird omission from the base game that I hope gets added in at some point, because it feels, with the replace tool in the game, it feels like it should be here. And then the next thing that we want to do is get one more connection across here. This one is going to be a bit more of a trick because we've got some really steep terrain here. I want to get over the train tracks first though. So this appears to be the narrowest point. So now we just have to find our way up here. And I think the best approach here will be to grab this road and try to flatten it out on this end. And now that we know what the elevation is here, we can grab this. We'll level a small pad, and now we have at least a landing that we can work with. Unfortunately, our terrain is not working with us here because we actually dropped down a hill. So what I think we're going to do is attempt to build this up just a little bit. We know what our height is over here, so we should be able to pop that in right here. It's actually considerably lower over here, so that was probably a real bad move right there. I just inadvertently deleted this bridge, or maybe it was advertently. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, but that's what I was hoping for. It gave us a grounded segment. Okay, that is much better. And the reason I wanted to build that up is it's just considerably less expensive to do that, both up front and in the long term. Maintaining a bridge is expensive, and this is not an important bridge like I mentioned. So now that we have this in place, let's lay out our community. And here's what I'm thinking. We're going to go with a grid that's fairly tight in this area down here. So whatever the block size ultimately is, it's going to be half of that down here. So I'm thinking that we've got our 15 here. We'll go 10 by 15. Okay, so here's the method to the madness. This is the downtown area, so I'm going to focus all the zoning along these side street looking things, and then back this way, we're going to double the block size, and that'll be where we have some of our residential properties. And that'll be a little bit of future planning for us so we can start to see where our roads are heading in the directions that they're heading in. And now with our city layout in place, let's move on to adding services and zoning. And thankfully, we can see that the fire is moving in the opposite direction from our town, so we don't have to panic and quickly build a fire department right away. We can kind of take a breath and make sure that we're building what makes sense. What I think we're going to do is probably do our zoning first and then add in some of our services as the community needs them. The fuel plant has a lot of employees. We've talked about that already, 915. What we didn't talk about is that all of these employees are college educated, so either well educated or highly educated. So that's going to drive the kinds of housing that we build in our community. You might have been thinking we'll just add a whole bunch of low-income housing and that will solve it for us, but that's not the case. So we're going to need to make this a community that caters to college-educated folks, so mid-rises, maybe some single-family homes, a lot of row homes and things of that nature, and we're going to want to have a lot of amenities as well. Now, looking back over here, you can see that all these farms are also missing employees. They're missing educated employees, so those are folks that have a high school education, which might drive us towards building a high school right up front. So we are going to be building on our smaller blocks first, and we'll have a mixture of zoning types through here. I'm going to start out with some of our businesses, and come to think about it, I don't want any zoning to occur along this road right here. So for the time being, I will add a key wall to this. So now I'm going to go through and just add a whole bunch of commercial along here. And we're going to need to add parking because I will remove it all along Woodland Street, and there's no parking on any of these alleyways. Now that we've got some commercial growing through here, let's add a whole bunch of residential. So I'm going to place some of our medium density closer to the water. And now before I add in row homes, I am going to add some parking. Like I mentioned, we aren't going to have any parking anywhere throughout this area. So parking is going to be one of those necessary evils in this place. Now in the downtown, I'm going to fill in the rest of this with row homes, although I am going to alternate between the European and the North American row homes. And now before we completely fill this area in, I am going to add some mixed use as well. And now we're going to take a quick moment to think about park space, because I do think that would be a consideration here. Generally, there's a park space requirement when you're developing generally. So either you pay a fee to build park space elsewhere, or you build it yourself, and that's generally cheaper. But let's go ahead and add a plaza or two to this area and really make this place feel a bit more lively. And I think that's about what we'll do for now. I was considering adding more, but I don't want to overdo it. And I want to leave space for a larger park space on one of these irregularly shaped parcels. Like this right here to me seems like the ideal spot for combining a couple of different parks. Now I am going to fill in the rest of this zoning primarily with row homes of a variety of sizes. And then we're going to add alleyways in between all of these blocks. Now that all of our zoning's in place, let's add our alleyways. And I waited on this because I didn't want there to be any issues with things breaking. Hopefully, if we turn off everything besides existing geometry, zoning cell length, and the grid, we'll be able to run these alleys up without very many issues. You know, and the more I look at these alleys, I'm going to call another mulligan and say that I really dislike them. So we are going to get rid of them. So I think I'm gonna be okay with the separation. We'll use that as areas where we can add in trees. And for the time being, I'm gonna go up and down Woodland Street and we are gonna take away all of those key walls. And then we're gonna add trees and grassy terraces to remove all the parking here. And now I want to start thinking about some of the city services in this area before we go any further. First and foremost, we can see we have a death care issue. So I think that we will add a cemetery here. And this may be the very first cemetery in the county. I think I've been using a lot of crematoriums. So truthfully, it's probably a good thing to add this. We don't have a lot of park space. This will kind of create its own park space because it is a park space, I should say. And it'll make the city more attractive and hopefully attract some of these college-educated residents that we need. You know, I was going back and forth on whether or not I should add in any of the outbuildings. I think I'm going to add the chapel, and that's about it. And now that we have that, let's start to think about our schools. So I think that though we need to think about schools here, we also probably need to look around our region as well. So I know right away, we've got to have an elementary school. It's City Skylines 2 and City Skylines 2 love some elementary schools. And I'll leave some separation here and we'll add our playground. And then what I think that we're going to do is we'll try to keep that 2 units of separation all the way around here. And then we'll leave a little bit more space back here and we will adjust the surfaces to make that look a little bit nicer. And then I want to see the utilization. We're already up to 61. Before we move on from this, I'm going to take a look at the others throughout the region. Yeah, right here we are at capacity. We'll add our extension wing on. That'll make this part of town happy. We've got 2 in view right here. That one is almost full at the university. This one right here in Old Bend is almost at capacity as well. And then we've got one over here, and I'm guessing this one's at capacity. We're 1 away. So we will expand. And then I want to take a look at our capacity for our high schools. I can see those both right now. We are actually over 50% full for Washington High School. And for our high school over in Charity Bay High School, we've got 34 students. So maybe this football stadium didn't matter all that much because they can't even put together a full team. So I am going to build a high school. I get it. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Reasonably, I think that this would be a combined K-12, but we don't have that option. We will do the best that we can with what we have. And there we go for all of our probably 4 students over here. Wow, we actually have 20. So there was a need for the high school. And now let's finally place our safety services. So we're going to start out with our police department because I think we'll just go with our real basic police station. And we'll likely place that right here. Now for our firefighting, I saw a fire over here and it's a reminder that we've got to do something bigger. So I'd love to place one of these firefighting helicopter depots, but we don't have it unlocked yet. So let's unlock that. And it's only 2 development points. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm really nervous about the size of this asset. Let's see. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I think that we'll do something like this. And honestly, even though this is kind of far off the beaten path, I think it makes sense considering just how many flammable things there are out here to have additional firefighting coverage and capacity. We're also going to add a normal firehouse out here as well, and we'll add that in the same block as our police station. And for this, I am going to add on the upgrade. I know it's probably a little reactionary, but I think that we need to make sure that our firefighting protection out here is very, very good. Now, speaking of reactionary, we've got a lot of traffic out here. I'm going to react to it a little bit. And I didn't want to increase capacity without a reason to do so. This is a good reason. So I will double capacity effectively by adding turning pockets through here. And then I think that there are 3 more city services that we need to add. We need to add healthcare, the internet, and mail coverage. So I'm going to add a clinic in this kind of irregularly shaped parcel right here. And I am going to add that not directly to the arterial, but within close proximity to it. And this honestly could act as a regional medical facility because of the close proximity to the outside. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we have it right here. And then let's add our post office. And for our post office, I think that I'm going to add that close to this little city services complex over here again. Now, the main thing that I'm thinking about here is the proximity to this cargo rail terminal, because we could get mail from this facility and bring it right to the post office. And right here, we're in close proximity to both the viaduct and this little highway right here. So I think this is a good location for it. And because we're adding this right here, I am going to add a connection directly to the viaduct. And then finally, let's think about our communications, so our telecom. And so we have this telecom tower that we haven't unlocked yet. I think that might be the route that we want to go. I'm going to see what radius this has for us. Honestly, it's probably mostly enough for our town, but I'm going to unlock this because I think that this could cover everything for us. And look at that. Yeah, this one telecom tower covers everything over here. That is a much better option for us in my estimation. And what I think that we'll do is we'll add this. I think I might add this somewhere over here. And that should get us connected. Now, when you're in town, you see that. And honestly, I really like the way that looks up there. And then for the rest of the zoning in this area, we're going to go fairly low density. And I am going to cut off some of these roads. We're going to build out a little bit further, and we will orient the grid around this roundabout. So again, we'll go with our 15 by 20. And now with the rest of our zoning, I just don't want to overthink it. So as we are closer to the downtown core, we will go and just basically fill in the entire block with zoning. And then as we get a bit further out, we'll add a unit or two separation in between the homes. So I'm going to begin right here and boom, just fill the whole block in. We're right near the downtown core. It's completely fine. And there we go. We've filled in throughout the entire community, and you can kind of see what I was going for. You're dense in the core, and then the density will dissipate as you move further out. And maybe over time, we will fill in some of these areas, but for now, I like the way it looks. And as we add landscaping through here, I think it's really going to fill out as well. So before we move on from this, I do want to add a district all the way around here. There we go. We've named this community Bailey. We can see that we've got 1,725 residents here. And I'm really curious what our education looks like. And you can see for the most part, it is high school educated and elementary school educated people. So we're going to have to boost this up over time. But I think for now, it's probably as good as it gets. I also do want to label Bailey Lake. And there we go. We've got Bailey Lake right there and Little Bailey Lake right next to it. So now that our community has been established, let's move on to a little bit of landscaping and detailing. For our detailing, we'll start up here by our mines and our farms. And the very first thing I want to do is just line all of these farms with trees. And there we go. And I imagine this being completed as part of the highway project that actually built this little bend around the edge right here. So very pleased with the way the landscaping is done around the farms, but I do want to improve it right here as well. This is an important feature of this community. And then we do have all these surfaces. And the fun thing is these have actually been expanded since the last time we were in the build. And I don't really want to add any surfaces right now. I actually want to remove some. So I just did something that's a bit extreme, but I wanted to delete that whole surface. And I'm going to try to fix this because I really did not like the way it was looking. Okay, so final verdict on what I just did. Does it look better? I'd say that it does. Was it a colossal waste of time? Absolutely. So I probably will never do that again, but it looks a lot cleaner. All right, now that that's complete, I am going to spray this with a few more trees. So I think that there are a couple of areas like this where maybe we could touch it up just a bit. And there we go. We've really increased the flammability in that area, and I'm quite pleased. So now let's move on to this area. And there's something that's looked off about this to me the entire time, and I think I figured out what it is. I think that we've just got our water tower in the wrong spot. So I am going to call a bit of a mulligan on this. We're going to move this right about here. Actually, maybe we should move it something like this, which will give it a more prominent location. And then once again, I will give it its path and we'll make sure that the water is connected to it. Well, we'll put this underneath the path where I guess it could go. Now, the reason why this is important is it opens this up to allow us to do something a little bit nicer with the grounds here. So we're going to imagine that this is actually a larger piece of property. Now, coming over here, I've been giving a lot of thought to this downtown. I mentioned earlier that I wanted alleys, and then I pulled back on that idea because we use the alleys for our local roads. What I think I'm going to do instead is go ahead and use a bunch of pathways where I wanted the alleys to be. And there we go. I think that is most of the gaps through here. And you can see that what it's basically done is added a ton of pedestrian connectivity through here. This is a very walkable place now, and I absolutely love it for that. Now I am going to go through with the surface tool again and adjust a couple of these parks. You can see that we've got a couple right here that we could extend all the way to the edge. And I think in a couple of cases like this, we are going to do just that. So these sorts of parks are absolutely wonderful for that. Same thing with a park like this. And now I want to take a little bit of time to fill in the trees in between the homes. I've done a lot in this area, so it's time to kind of step away for a moment. And we're going to go fairly dense through here. I think we'll go something like 65%, and we'll switch between the evergreen and the deciduous. And then I cleared out a couple of these parcels. These are parcels where we could see future expansion of some of these uses. So that's why I'm leaving them empty. In the meantime, we are going to add some surfaces and trees. Now this little triangle right here, I talked a little bit about wanting a dog park, and we've got to add one because that is a very important park, quite obviously. There we go. I like that quite a bit. And then for our final park, it's this one right here. And I kind of want to do something a little bit more special here. And there we go. That was probably a little extra, probably a little bit more than was needed in this town. But you know what? I just like making parks. So we're going to make parks. And I also learned from the comments in the previous episode that pushing the home button will allow me to bring up the add object menu and remove it very quickly. So very happy to be able to do that. And with that, we've done a ton of detailing, arguably more than we should have done in this build. So let's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Oh dear. So while I was planting a bunch of trees, it looks like most of Magnolia County has encountered some sort of a fire. So as a result, we've got a ton of bodies all over the place and a ton of buildings that have burned down. So I am going to, oh geez, our school, we're going to try to rebuild some of these things. And honestly, a lot of these buildings look like they are just buildings that have burned down. So it's kind of clearing some of these out. No, it's actively burning down our university. Okay, I can't take anymore. We've got to add another firefighting helicopter depot because this is getting way too crazy. And I just can't anymore. So I think that we are going to add this somewhere near our industrial park because we have our city services campus over here already. And we'll place this right across the street from our existing fire station. And they're all dispatched right away, which is wonderful. What I really wanted to do was make 2 fixes based on your feedback and then one more that I've already made. So the first one comes from Chow Sonic, who recommended that I reestablish the Jeffersonian grid because I've kind of fallen away from it. So I've gone all the way around the build and added little bits of the Jeffersonian grid, and it's there. The second thing I want to do is adjust this bridge. A lot of people thought that this was kind of unreasonable, and the longer I look at it, the more I agree. It's just kind of overkill for this area. So what we're going to do is call a mulligan on this bridge and straighten this out and find a shorter span. And there we go. That is a much gentler slope through here. It's a much shorter bridge span, much more reasonable. We are elevating the bridge a little bit over the top of the river, which will still give us a more reasonable bridge. And then over here, this was probably the most controversial part of the entire build. So the big question here was, why didn't I just do a trumpet? And the answer is, I'm not really sure. So let's get this fixed. And there we go. It's not perfect, but it is considerably better. All right, and now let's repair the rest of these buildings. And I've gone ahead and repaired basically every single building that I could within the community. But you can see we still got one major problem. There are a lot of dead bodies. Lots of buildings burned down and lots of people need to get picked up as a result. But I think that that is a problem for the next episode, not this one. But there is one last thing I want to take a look at, and that is back over here in Bailey. I want to see how our fuel plant is doing, and you can see that we're still processing grains, which is unfortunate. And our employees, I mean, we're doing all right there. We are about a quarter of the way full, operating at about a little under 50% efficiency, 43% right now. Now, we are going to keep an eye on this because I have seen this in other builds, switch over from grains to petroleums, or oils rather. So I'm hoping that that happens, considering we don't really have any grain over here, but we'll just have to keep an eye on it. And with that, I think we're going to leave it here. And I know that this has been a wild one, but I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I really want to thank you for your time. There's a million things that you could have been doing, and you decided to watch this wild and large episode with me, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.